All right, we'll be learning a single string style version of Blackberry Blossom. I'll play through the tune so you can hear what the basic version sounds like. What I played there in the intro had a few little extra goodies, a few of the licks that you'll be able to check out in Tunefox. But as I said, in a moment I'll play through the basic version so you can see what's going on there. And then we'll talk through a bit of the tune, some technique tips, a little bit of theory, and some practice suggestions. And then we'll also check out a few of the licks that are in Tunefox as well. This one is a great workout for your fretting hand. We're going to be playing it mostly out of this 7th position area here, around the 7th fret, and kind of dancing in and around this first inversion G shape, although we'll be outlining several of the different chords with some partial arpeggios and scale pattern and scale runs. All right, and when I started this tune, I also added some potatoes in there. That's a great way to kick off a fiddle tune if you're at a jam. The potatoes that I played, I just borrowed from the melodic style version of this tune. It's just in measure 1, so check that out. It's pretty simple, but if you want to check out the tablature, it's measure 1 of the melodic style version of this tune. All right, I'm just going to count in and play the basic version of this tune slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, I'll talk through the tune a measure at a time as it works out. The way we've written it here, it's going to be basically a phrase at a time as well. All right, let's jump into the first phrase. We've got some scale pattern action. We're kind of skipping up the scale, right? So we're going up 2 notes and then walking back. Doing that 3 times. And then we've got a little bit of a pentatonic run on the G chord here, and it's also going to walk us into the first melody note in the next measure. If you don't know your scale notes here in G, think about this first inversion chord shape that you'll use in a lot of vamping, right? This D shape. right? So the notes that we're really working with related to this chord shape is going to be the 7th fret note on the first string here, and also the 7th fret note on the 2nd string. Missed a couple there. And then we've got this 9th fret note here on the G string. And then on the D string, we've also got this 10th fret note, that chord note, and then the 7th fret note behind it. And as you know, since we have 2 D strings, this 10th fret note is available there as well. Right? So those are all the kind of scale notes available that we're working with out of this first inversion shape. Technique. Finger preparation is hugely important. You can see when I start this out, I've already got several fingers down, and I've also got this bar kind of prepared. That's really helping me navigate a lot of this. Right, so when I let off that pinky note, I'm using the bar to get that 7th fret first string. And then when I walk into the next kind of 4-note piece of the scale pattern, I'm just going to this bar. Again, I'm leaving that kind of partial bar down there almost the whole time for that first measure, for that first phrase. Use the focus feature to kind of loop this and get this down, and you can also use the difficulty slider to dial out some extra notes, and you'll end up with something that sounds like this. Right, so a lot simpler, but still sounds great. And I think if you play this at a jam, anyone is going to know that it is, without a doubt, Blackberry Blossom that you're playing. Measure 2, we get a little bit trickier here. We start out with this kind of little scale run and almost a partial arpeggio of the C chord. Right, we end up hitting all of those important C chord notes in that root shape, but we kind of dance into it with a bit of a scale pattern here, just walking into it. Right, and then we've got this little scale run out of a G, an actual arpeggio here. Same notes that we'd play out of that first inversion. But we're playing that open G string there, and that gives us a second to kind of shift so we can get this scale run that's going to outline the A chord here. Right, and after we do that, we're shifting into 6th position, as you can see here. And once this pinky note goes down, I'm going to move this first finger forward so it'll be ready to finish out the phrase and get back into 7th position. Right, and that finishes out measure 2, that second phrase, and we're ready to go into measure 3 at that point. Right, so as you can see, the use of the pinky is required here, so if you're not used to that, it's time to buckle up and jump in and give this thing a shot. Just go slow. You know, you can use the focus feature for the entire measure, but sometimes you might just want to take, you know, like a 4-note piece of this and just play it repeatedly. A lot of the times, especially when using these bigger stretches, like something that requires like this position playing, kind of 4 fingers per fret, I like to use a more kind of classical guitar approach with my thumb behind the neck. I don't really like that approach when playing more Scruggs style banjo, but for a lot of like really intense single string stuff or melodic stuff that requires big stretches, that classical kind of guitar posture with the thumb behind the neck and elbow relaxed in is kind of the way to go. For the basic arrangement, measure 3 is the same as measure 1. We talked about this in the Scruggs style video. This is really common in fiddle tunes for the first and third phrases of each section to be the same. All right, there in measure 4, everything's a little bit different. Some of it's the same. We start out with this kind of run into the C chord that you've seen before. Right, and then we've got this little pentatonic device here. And then we kind of descend the scale in thirds for a second before kind of finishing out the phrase. Right, and there's where we are resolving to the G. but we just kind of keep things moving, keep that melodic line going, and that moves us both back into the A section, and that will also carry us into the B section after our second time on the A part. The B section is pretty simple. It's usually a bit more simpler, you know, even when you're playing a kind of fancy version of this fiddle tune. And usually, you know, we're going to get a melody that goes, spans the octave of E here, like goes from E to E. That would require a really big position shift, and part of the approach for learning this, at least this single string style version of this tune, is to get you playing out of 7th position. So instead of hitting this low E note, we're going to substitute that with a B note, which is also in the E minor chord, and we still get kind of the same sound. Right, so this way we're still kind of playing out of the position, but get a sound that still works great in that position. And it also just shows how we can use different notes that aren't the exact melody note, especially if it matches up with the chord of the moment. That's a pretty important concept to kind of start to learn. Check out the fingerings in the tablature. I like playing this passage like this, going ring finger to pinky. You could also do middle finger and ring finger here. It's really just whatever works best for your hands. All right, so there's nothing too wild, you know, going on there in the B section. Again, the first phrase and the third phrase of the B section are the same, and the second one is not too different and just has a really short kind of scale run in there as well. And then the last phrase is the same as the end of the A section. All right, that's about all we've got here for the single string style version of Blackberry Blossom. Make sure to dive into those licks, check out those scale patterns, and try to see how they connect to chord shapes. Understanding how scales and scale patterns connect to chord shapes can be a really great aid for you when trying to work on improvisation. It's just a really quick go-to. If you know the chord progression and the chord shapes and some of the scales that connect to them, you can kind of dance around in there and play something that sounds good, even if you don't have a precise melody down. There's lots of great single string variations here, single string scale patterns that we can just kind of drop in and play over these quick chord changes. There's some cool melodic stuff here, and some of the melodic patterns show you how to play the single string stuff kind of note for note. So it's really cool to be able to kind of see exactly what's happening with the melodic stuff by being able to play the same exact thing single string style. That was actually advice I got from a great local banjo player, Jeff Hayes. Always told me to try to make sure that I could play whatever melodic thing I was trying to play single string as well, so I'd really understand what was going on. All right, after this, you might want to check out the melodic style version of Blackberry Blossom, and also the vamping, again, so you know all the different chord shapes, and maybe even some rolling backup. You can get some really cool sounds from that, and it really could be used for a lead or backup, depending on how you play it. All right, I hope you guys enjoy this one. It's a challenge, but it is a lot of fun. Keep picking and stay tuned.